Welcome everyone. My name is Kay. I am one of the co-organizers of this event. Unfortunately, my co-organizer Art is not here today. He needs to be in California. He organized another event in California as well. So I'm a software developer. I run my own software business since 2007 in New York City. I work with startups and big companies. Since 2009, I involved too much Internet of Things through a couple of big companies. I was a consultant for Pioneer Electronics in Japan and a couple of big American corporates in the United States. So I decided to establish this meetup with Art, and we just want to meet you guys and collaborate, participate, and do good things. First of all, thank you for our sponsors, Openpicus. They actually sponsor for the drinks and the food. Our main sponsor is TurnToTech. They're going to give a speech. Welcome, Oren from TurnToTech.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming out. We're excited about this event. Just a little bit about TurnToTech and then we can get to it. So what we are is, well, we're a few things. So first and foremost, we're sort of a place to be educated about software development. We have a intensive 12-week boot camp that people can learn really strong iOS development skills. It's 6 weeks of intensive training and then 6 weeks of internship where you actually get to work on a real product that goes to market. You work with a team and it's like a real project and real users end up using it. And it's a great portfolio piece, but it's also a real app. Additionally, on top of the fact that we're introducing Swift, the new iOS language from Apple, into that camp, we're also going to be doing a part-time program in Swift development for people with some experience who just need a way to get through the Swift basics sort of after work. It'll be Monday and Wednesday evenings for a few weeks. And another thing that we are is an incubator. And what that means is that people who have startup ideas can come to us and pitch their ideas. And if they are looking for development help, we can come to some agreement about how we can help contribute our expertise and our ideas to help you develop and grow your business. And so we're looking for people with any kind of ideas, as long as you have some kind of expertise in that domain and something to contribute on your own. We can find a way to collaborate and work together. We also offer space for events like this to the community, to the tech community. And we also have a free co-working space over here. So if you're finding yourself looking for a place to get some work done, you can come by and use our space. And that's pretty much it. So if you have any more questions, feel free to grab Sean. He's sitting at the desk there. And have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, our drink sponsors and the food sponsor, pizzas, are coming. It's a company called Openpicus. You probably saw these papers. They're from Italy, and they're not going to be here, so they send a message and they send a video for you guys. So this is the video.
My name is Claudio Carnevali, and I'm co-founder and CEO at Openpicus. Today, I want to show you something that will change definitely the way you approach to the IoT hardware. This is Flyport. It's a programmable and connected module, only one. Flyport is available in 3 compatible versions with Wi-Fi, with GPRS cellular, or with Ethernet. Flyport is the best platform for the IoT because it's low power and it comes with our free IDE that lets you create amazing applications such as connected sensors, home automations, smart objects, and many more. Flyport lets you scale. It's not just a great tool for prototyping. You can create end-user products. More than 3,000 companies are embedding Flyport into their products right now. Today I also want to show you our new product, the IoT Kit. The IoT Kit is a very small carrier board for Flyport, and it's compatible with more than 80 different sensors and actuators. So I'll plug Flyport into the IoT Kit, and now I can also plug a sensor. For example, I have a distance sensor here. I can plug it here, and that's it. Because for any sensor we give you a free library. So just plug the device and start coding. The IoT now is a matter of minutes, not anymore struggling with the prototyping, soldering, and the hardware. Thank you very much and enjoy this event. Don't forget to visit our website www.openpicus.com and follow us on Twitter. Bye.
This is our sponsors. If you have any question about Openpicus, I think I know a lot now, and they're gonna send the kits for everyone for next meetup. Hopefully, we're waiting for the shipment. And let me introduce you Jenny from RGA, Techstars, Connected Devices Incubator Accelerator Program.
Hey, I'm Jenny. I work for Techstars, and we partnered with RGA to launch the accelerator. We announced it last week, so it's the second one focusing on IoT, hardware, connected devices. We're right here in New York. It's a 14-week program, and the RGA part, most of you know Techstars, but the RGA part is really about branding, marketing, design, strategy, all the things that they're great at. They're the ones responsible for Nike Fuel Band, Beats, all of that. So part of the program, you get about 150 hours of their time, about a month of top quality people working on your product. So if anyone's interested in finding out more, the program starts in October, but we're looking at companies now. So I'm going to be hanging out here. Please come, let me know. Any questions? Just yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. One other person I want to introduce you, Paul Farkas. He runs Wearable Wednesday.
Hey, Ken.
Yeah, hey.
So Kate played that Openpicus thing really low because that was actually a brain implant. When everyone leaves, we're going to have everyone go on a corner.
Sorry about this, yeah.
So I created Wearable Wednesday in New York. Basically, we've narrowed down the field to about 20 early topics where we're covering fashion to fitness, enterprise, identity, commerce, apps, mobile. And we're doing it in an elegant fashion. We're having great thought leader panels, and we're having about 3 hours of drinking and networking. And we're working on doing some grander things, such as Wearable Day, which would be on December 3rd, which would be after Cyber Monday and Giving Tuesday. So I'd love to talk to everyone about that. We have some good brands that we're signing up, and basically not only would it be about shopping, but it would be about aspiration, groups using wearables, awareness. I think the space is moving really fast, but it really needs to be understood. And as it mainstreams, something like a Wearable Day would really help. So I'd love to talk to everyone about Wearable Wednesday and Wearable Day, and I look forward to meeting everyone. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you very much. All right. The original schedule was John's speech is next, but he's working on some he's dealing with technical issues. So Sheiva is going to be the next, and she's going to talk about. Do you want me to help? Yeah, Desperate Housewives and Internet of Things.
Okay, hi everybody. How's everyone doing? Excited? Okay, so this is not exactly a pitch, which I think a lot of you are probably used to in settings like this. It's going to be talking about a project that is like a pitch. It is an actual mobile app. It's called Desperate Housewares. But it's also going to be talking about the process behind the actual project and how I think it might relate to those of you who are interested in Internet of Things. And specifically, I wanted to talk about an emotional Internet of Things. So Desperate Housewares, and I realize, again, this is not a pitch, and that's why I'm putting text on here, is exposes the little-known lives of objects teetering on the edge of being discarded, suspended in a curbside purgatory. Will they get a second chance? Will someone respond to their urgent cries for a new home? Free, barely used, broken. Desperate Housewares is an emotional Internet of Things. So this is a mobile app, basically where people can share photos of things that they find on the street. And then the app will automatically mash up those photos with text from Craigslist misconnections. So what would a Desperate Houseware look like? So here is a cabinet. You are and always will be the love of my life. I'm just looking for company. You are so pretty, and I so regret not coming back to tell you that. So here's just the general interface of what the mobile app looks like. Basically, you open up the app, you'd be able to open up the camera, take a photo. It'd give you the option, obviously, of retaking that photo or changing the geolocation that it automatically would tag. And then from there, it automatically generates a story next to that photo and adds a map to that geolocation in case you wanted to go get that thing. The app is very, very simple in terms of the user interface. There are just five main screens. So again, in terms of concept, I want to take a step back and think about why did I make this in the first place? So I wanted to make Desperate Housewares because of the problems of sustainability around trash specifically. And trash is a very big issue globally, which I'm sure many of you already know. One example is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which for those of you who don't know is a spot in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that is twice the size of Texas, although some researchers have said that it's twice the size of the US, where there's 6 times more plastic than plankton in that area. In addition to that, many of you, of course, have heard of Fresh Kills here in greater New York City, which before it was a park was a landfill that is greater by volume than the Great Wall of China. Additionally, in New York City, the New York City Department of Sanitation did a study back in 2004, 2005. Yes, that is 10 years ago. They're starting to do one again now, where they analyzed the city's trash for a full year and found that over half of what we throw away is either compostable or recyclable. In addition to that, I personally, I don't know about all of you here, but I personally moved to New York about 5 years ago, and I know that when I moved here, I just was bombarded with the sheer number of things that people just leave on the street that is perfectly good. And I'm sure many of you here have experienced that yourselves. So Desperate Housewares kind of fills the gap. It is, again, for sharing photos of free things on the street. It's a fun and more efficient curb alert system, and it's a misconnections for things. But ultimately, it's an emotional Internet of Things. And again, I want to stress an emotional Internet of Things because I think there are 2 main reasons that I went for emotional engagement of my users. So again, just to go back to the Great Garbage Patch, these images here are images that different media outlets have used to accompany articles that they've published about the Great Garbage Patch. All of these photos are photos of whole objects, right? You see netting, you see toys, you see a bottle cap, and then this image, which is particularly inaccurate, which is a beach side. I told you it's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. When in reality, the Pacific Garbage Patch is actually a soup. It's a soup of plastic materials that have taken years to break down into small objects or into small pieces. Because they're so small, this is part of the reason why it's such an environmental disaster, because we can't really clean it up in the same way that people would imagine, because it mixes in with plankton and the different life that exists in the ocean there. So this affects us also in our everyday lives. So I mentioned we have a hard time kind of understanding and visualizing the problem of sustainability and of plastics in general, unless we see them as whole objects. This extends to our everyday lives as well. So let's say, for example, you go to a deli and you're really hungry and you buy a sandwich. That sandwich is pre-packaged in plastic. You walk outside, you unpackage it, and as you're walking, you throw that plastic away. Maybe in our minds subconsciously, I think we think that the second an object enters our lives and the second it leaves our lives, that is what the life of an object actually looks like in relation to our lives, right? But in reality, that one piece of plastic that we threw away, it's going to outlive all of us, right? So again, for Desperate Housewares, as a concept and as an app, I wanted to focus on what people are already doing around objects that they're giving away. So we think that objects pretty much die, quote unquote die, when we give them away. What are people doing at that moment? Well, one thing that they do is they post curb alerts. So for those of you who don't know what curb alerts are, one best example of that is when people go to Craigslist, for example, and they just want to broadcast to as many people as possible, hey, oh my God, there's this amazing whatever that's left on the street, whether it's clothes or furniture or whatever else, right? And then in addition to curb alerts, what else are people doing? What does the landscape look like? There are actually plenty of Craigslist-oriented mobile apps out there. And again, I mean, the mobile app market is clearly saturated. We all know this, right? In addition to that, obviously, this is such an obvious point, but there are plenty of photo-taking apps that are out there as well. There are even web services out there for people who want to share free things. These are two examples here. One is FreeCycle, the other is Yoink. Both of these services actually require people to coordinate in order to be able to trade these objects. And many people in the feedback, even directly on some of these sites, have said, hey, I'm so frustrated, I can't coordinate with these people. Or they'll say, hey, there isn't enough stuff on this site. So what Desperate Housewares does is it aggregates all of the best tools that exist out there. But in addition to that, again, I want to bring it back to emotions and an emotional Internet of Things. So why are emotions important? So part of the emotional process, I think, that came in when I was doing user testing. So when I was doing user testing for Desperate Housewares, I did tons of interviews. I interviewed people who were waste management directors, to the head of waste management for New York City, to super users like dumpster divers. I don't know if many of you know about dumpster divers, all the way to people who post on Craigslist for their things. I don't know if any of you recognize this particular person, but in any case, many people, when they were posting, used emotional language to describe the objects themselves. So whether they found the object and they were really, really excited to share that thing, or they were posting something that actually belonged to them and they wanted it to give it away, they would use language like, hey, this thing needs a new home, right? So again, bringing it back, Desperate Housewares is not just for sharing photos of free things on the street. It's not just a fun and more efficient curb alert system. It's ultimately an emotional Internet of Things. How does this relate to what all of you are doing here today? I wanted to bring in the two main points, just to bring it back again. One, consider the materials of the objects that you are designing. Does it have to be plastic? Many of you, I'm sure, are dealing with 3D printing. And in the world of 3D printing, a lot of plastic is just kind of automatically involved. Does it have to be plastic? Are there other ways that you can design? And then in addition to that, learn from the process that I went through in understanding that humans are ultimately emotional creatures, and we engage and are motivated by the ways in which we are emotional, especially when it comes to our objects and our emotional Internet of Things. So thank you. Thanks so much. So again, I mentioned that this is less of a pitch and more of just like something to put out there for those of you who are interested in Internet of Things and designing around Internet of Things. For those of you who are interested in the app itself, awesome, you're great. Please feel free to send me a message. I have more documentation of this project on gethideous.com, which is the think, make, and play tank that I founded. And then in addition to that, for those of you who are curious, and I mean, I'm not sure if we have time for question and answers, I'm happy to take them. For those of you who are curious in terms of where the app is, right now I've done the front end development and obviously the design and the user interface design for this. And from here, my hope is to actually continue designing the back end, continue the user testing, and iterate from there. And right now, my main hope actually is to enter this into the NYC Big Apps competition. So if any of you are interested in this project in general, please feel free to drop me a line. So,
Anyone, any questions? All
right, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, next we have John from Temboo. The original idea was like he was gonna do a workshop, and he brought a bunch of electronic things, and then he was gonna build the Internet of Things in a second. But unfortunately, we don't have an internet. So we have the things, we don't have an internet. So next time we're gonna do the workshop, but this time it's gonna be unfortunately both slides. This is the electronic device it's going to use. It's called Arduino Uno, and it has a couple of sensors on it. One of them is the LDR light sensor. Most of them are familiar with this tiny device, tiny prototyping board, whatever you call it, microprocessor. All right, John, enjoy. Sorry about this.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Kay, for organizing this and inviting me. I met Kay maybe 2 weeks ago at an ITP camp workshop that a couple of my colleagues and I were running on using Temboo and Arduino. And at that point, he asked if I would give a brief talk here. And as you can probably tell from my title, that is exactly what I'm here to do, give a bit of a talk on Temboo, working with Arduino, and what I like to call the next question in the Internet of Things. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Temboo, we are a library of over 2,000 APIs, databases, code utilities, all the processes associated with these. And what we do is condense it for our users. We'll give you, in your browser, 4, 5, or 6 lines of code in any of 10 different programming languages that you can use to build all of these different processes from all these different APIs and web services into your apps. And the idea behind this is that if you're a developer, you're going to want to be spending your time and your effort on what you do best, the thing that you can bring to the table to add the most value to whatever it is that you're building. And chances are that's not integrating an API. It's not reinventing the wheel and going through the documentation, the unfamiliar language, and whatever it is that you don't want to work with an API. So in short, we give you less code to maintain. We maintain most of the process on our back end, and it gives you, as a developer or a programmer of some sort, less to worry about. And here's a kind of colorful collage of just some of the different APIs we support. And as I said, we normalize all of them. So the benefit of Temboo is there's just one learning curve, whether you're trying to deal with OAuth or the intricacies of the API or different application keys that you get from the different APIs. All you have to do is learn one set of steps with Temboo, and with that, you can integrate any of these and more into whatever it is that you're building. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Arduino boards, but they're an open source prototyping platform. The idea was to find a better way to teach people who had not experienced hardware programming how to do it. And so this is an Arduino Uno. There's an Ethernet connection, a couple USB connections, and various pins that you can use to hook up sensors, motors, LEDs, whatever you would like, and basically get your hands dirty with hardware prototyping. And sometime last year, what we at Temboo realized was that in addition to saving time and effort, we can also save memory. And that what we do, which is basically condense complex processes into a few lines of code, works great for devices like Arduino boards, which are highly memory constrained. So a board like this couldn't connect to Gmail or Dropbox or Facebook on its own, but it does have the capacity to call the cloud and then execute the rest of the process on the cloud. So last September, we partnered with Arduino, and they came out with this Uno. Well, it was their most recent board up until a few weeks ago, and it was their first board to include a Wi-Fi chip, the first board they had to be natively internet compatible. And that's great for Temboo because we're a web service, and so suddenly you can use Temboo to program your Arduino boards using all sorts of those APIs that I showed you earlier. And then even more recently, we added a function called IoT mode, which is backwards compatible with all the previous Arduino boards, which are not themselves able to connect to the internet, but with a shield, an Ethernet shield or a Wi-Fi shield, it all works. So Temboo is, as of now, compatible with any Arduino board. As long as you can hook it up to the internet, you can hook it up to Temboo, and you can program it with all the power of the cloud. And this is kind of a schematic of how we interact with Arduino. You can get any of the APIs, the code utilities, the databases that we support. We will generate the code for a complete Arduino program, which is called a sketch, in your browser. You can copy and paste the code into your Arduino IDE. It's ready to go, and you just upload it to the board. And as Kay mentioned, this is the point in the talk when I would have plugged this in and showed you some very cool stuff about how I could generate a sketch immediately and have it sense the light value in the room, call my phone when it got dark. I could press 1 on my phone. It would turn the LED on. It would be all exciting. But of course, that requires the internet. And so fortunately, I have my backup screenshots. So if you were to go to the Temboo library, you would see this. You can see that we have 10 different programming languages plus REST API functionality, and Twyla, which is our sort of in-house process builder, which you can download and use to build your own processes if we don't have what you want. You can see on the left-hand bar just the first sort of snippet of the different APIs we offer. And you would find an interface like this, where you would plug in the different tokens given to you by the API, whatever the inputs are. You could save those, and in a window like the one on the right, we would generate the code in a second for you. It would be ready to go. We could generate it in any of those different programming languages, including the Arduino language. And to top that off, we have what we call a device coder, which will let you also initialize the different pins on the board to add on the hardware components you have. So I could say, all right, I've got a photo sensor attached and a light here, and I want these to interact in this way. It's very simple just to plug in your inputs, upload the code to your board, and be off and running. So I wish I could show it to you. We have a demo video online if you'd like to check it out afterwards. It's very cool. And it's what we think is a great solution to some of the problems posed by programming connected devices and creating the Internet of Things. This is an image of the code generation. So I'm going to pause here, step back, and tell a little story to demonstrate the kinds of ways that we're thinking about IoT questions. In a previous life, I was a classical archaeologist. And when I was starting a master's program, they brought all of us in, sort of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and introduced us to the program that we were going to be in. And that involved a lot of administrative stuff and whatnot. But also, one rather eminent professor got up before all of us and said, here you are, starting out as master's students, and what you should be thinking of right now is your first book. And really, that's not even enough, because at all times, you should be thinking of your second book as well. And this was, of course, designed to impress and frighten us, and we indeed left worried that we weren't going to be able to survive the first week of the program. But all that aside, he had a point. And that point is that although it's fine to tackle problems one step at a time, to take things on as individual entities, you really need to be thinking ahead. Without a long-term goal, you can't make progress because there's no goal to progress towards. And I've taken this to IoT. I think we spend a lot of time thinking about the first problem, but we also need to be thinking about the second problem in IoT if we're really going to get anywhere. And that, I'm now going to explain how Temboo approaches that conundrum. So the first problem is simply, how do we do this? How do we actually make the Internet of Things? How do we build this network? How do we connect the devices? How do we program them? What do we do? It's a big question, and it's the question that everyone working with IoT is trying to answer right now. And our solution is this idea of virtualized code, that by running the code on the cloud, you can do a lot with little devices. And with our ways to save inputs on the cloud, with the functionality we have to parse outputs that you get from the cloud, it's really easy to shrink down the memory you're actually using on your board and still run something fairly complex via the cloud. What I showed you was device coder. It gets around unfamiliarity that, for instance, many software developers have with working with hardware. And then, again, as I said, it's a great way to get around the memory constraints that you get on a board like an Arduino. But what happens after we answer this first question? Once we have the Internet of Things, once all of our devices are connected, we're able to program them, we're able to do all sorts of fancy things using web services and whatnot with our devices. Basically, how do we maintain the Internet of Things? It needs to be manageable and it needs to be cheap. And right now, it's really neither of those things. There are, I think, two main challenges to sustaining the Internet of Things after we create it. First, how do different devices communicate? And by different devices, I don't mean just one Arduino board and a second Arduino board, but rather devices that are made by different companies, programmed by different people, work on different systems. Right now, a lot of the Internet of Things is proprietary. Companies that are producing hardware that can connect will only connect their devices to other hardware that they produce, or to the apps that they are creating to sponsor their devices. And it really doesn't make a lot of sense, I think, to have multiple companies with multiple platforms, multiple clouds, multiple apps, multiple devices, all coming together in one, say, connected house. Because really, it's just going to be more complex for you and for me than it would have been to just have a regular old washing machine and dryer. It's too much to manage, it becomes too expensive, it's just too complex. And second, you run into the inherent limits of a physical device, that this thing is made of atoms, and if I throw it, it will break. For one thing, you can't really reprogram these all that easily if, say, you've got 1,000 sensors in your field and you're trying to measure the humidity in your crops. It's one thing for me to plug this Arduino into my laptop and change the program, but another thing for me to go out in the middle of winter and collect 1,000 devices that I've buried somewhere and reprogram all of those. And it's even harder to upgrade them because it becomes expensive. It's one thing to, say, upgrade your phone every 2 or 3 or 4 years, but another thing to upgrade your network of 1,000 devices. So this is a problem. You can connect all the devices, but it'll crash and burn rather quickly if you don't have a way to keep them running, keep them modern, keep them talking with one another. And this is the sort of problem that at Temboo we're thinking about, and this is the sort of problem we're trying to solve in our more general approach to the Internet of Things. And we have two main ways of approaching this. First, we're hardware agnostic. We're always adding more devices that we can work with, and in general, our goal is to be the programming interface for the entire Internet of Things. That we shouldn't be bound to one manufacturer or one proprietary concern. Rather, we should be able to work with anything. It should be a language, a system, a platform that crosses all boundaries and lets you connect any device that can connect to another device that can connect. And then the second thing we do is offload everything onto the cloud. We think that the cloud is the solution to the Internet of Things. The digital is still a solution for the physical. If I had been able to run the demo, you would have seen me put my phone number in to the inputs I added to my program, and that would have been what allowed this board to call me on my phone. The fun thing about that is the way Temboo set it up, I could have just swapped that out at any point for any of your phone numbers, and it would have called you. And I wouldn't have needed to reprogram the board, and I wouldn't have even needed to stop my program from running. It would have just switched, because the board is still doing the same thing. It's just calling the process on the cloud, and it's the cloud process that's different. And that isn't just limited to something like a phone number. It's the entire program. I could fundamentally change what my device is doing. Or it's the firmware. I could upgrade the firmware on my hardware without actually having to go out and find it and bring it back. And what that means is that suddenly all these devices are both backward compatible and forward compatible. So I can go back and hit an old version that I need to use to work with older hardware, but I can also prepare for hardware and software that hasn't even been invented yet. I don't need to know what it's going to look like. I don't need to know what it's going to do, because all I need to do is fix it on the cloud. And this puts a lot of power in a small device. Even an edge sensor on the very extreme of your network. Suddenly that is able to connect to the cloud and all of the power of the internet. And that, I think, is the answer to how we maintain the Internet of Things. So basically, this is some information on how we envision this. There are more capabilities and more power in a small device, and there's also more flexibility to something that's otherwise very dumb. And that is it for now. Are there any questions? Yes, there's a question.
This is kind of a setup, but how would you actually do the interface for that? Or you talked about doing the reprogramming, the controlling, the on-off, that kind of stuff, the reprogramming. What kind of interface are you using to do that?
Right, so that's an excellent question. What I mentioned several slides back called, it's Twyla, it's the tool that we use to build our processes. It's a new way of programming. It's what lets us give you code in any of the different programming languages we support. It's what keeps the maintenance low enough on our end to actually make this sort of thing a viable solution. The way that builds these processes, we call them choreos after choreographies, is we can basically pull in visually the different components of what you want to do and just have a starting point and an ending point. So really, all you need on your device is the starting point and the ending point. So the code to retrieve an input and the code to initialize some sort of output. And if you're not really working with inputs and outputs, that even is not necessary itself. So as long as this can call something named myProcess, then it doesn't matter what myProcess is. You could switch myProcess around on the cloud, and as long as it's still named myProcess, this will still call it. So I could pull out this LED and put in a motor, and it would go from turning on the LED to turning on the motor. And that's, I guess, the basic way to build this all out. That as long as your device stays connected, you can reach it and you can change it. Sure.
Is the software that's running in the cloud on backend, is that open source or is it proprietary?
It's open source. So by making this tool that we have public, you can build your own process and upload it as well. We'll run that.
So what is your business model?
It's a freemium-based subscription. So we have a free tier, which most people use, and then we have paid tiers above that if you're doing more in the way of calling or using more data.
Okay. And you use HTTP to the cloud, or how is your?
Yeah.
So it's based on RESTful APIs, or?
Yep, and we support that if we don't have the process that you're looking for, you can generally call it with the REST API that we have. And looks like,
questions, right?
yep. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, John. Honestly, I tried Temboo at NYU ITP, like we went together and a couple of NYU people here. It's piece of cake. In a second or so, you got your connected device and you do all kind of crazy things. And it's awesome. I hope he could show you the workshop. He could show you the demo and do a workshop. It's like literally maybe like less than 3 minutes, right? Took it up something to internet and trigger
and you're off and
something, go, call. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Thank you for all coming and interview.